I still remember the way she looked at me that morning, calm, confident, almost satisfied? Like someone who had already won a battle I didn't even know we were fighting. Her name was Marla Kensington, 42, widowed, mother of 2 teenagers, and apparently now my daughter-in-law. She was seated at my kitchen table as if she had lived here her whole life. Her hands wrapped around my favorite coffee mug, the one my husband gave me on our 18th anniversary. And standing beside her was my son, Evan, 24. My bright, kind, gentle Evan, except he wasn't standing like himself. His shoulders were tense, eyes lowered, jaw tight, as though he was waiting for something to explode. They had gotten married 3 months earlier. No wedding, no phone call, no conversation. Just a text that said, "Mom, I need time. I'll explain later." Later turned into never until today. Marla crossed her legs slowly, one knee over the other, and smiled. Not a friendly smile, a smile of ownership. "We should talk about the house," she said. "The house, the home my husband and I bought when Evan was just a baby. The home where we fixed leaking pipes ourselves because we couldn't afford a plumber. The home where my husband's photographs still hung in the hallway, exactly where I left them." She placed a folder on the table. Property transfer paperwork. To transfer my home into Evan's name, not ours, not shared his, but her eyes told me the truth. She wanted it for herself. Evan didn't look at me. He stared at the floor, twisting his wedding ring around his finger, over and over, like it was burning him. I could have asked why. I could have demanded answers, shouted, cried, but instead, I just looked at her, at the woman who had inserted herself into my son's life with practiced grace, who had already sold her own house, who had already moved her children into a rental close by, who had already started telling him what he needed, what he owed, who he should be. She thought I was naive, old, alone, easy to corner. She didn't know who she was dealing with because if I didn't move carefully, slowly, silently, I would lose my home and I would lose my son. Before all of this, life was quiet, predictable, gentle in the ways I had learned to appreciate as I got older. I live in a small town in Oregon, just outside Portland, the kind of town where people still wave when they pass you on the street, even if they don't remember your name exactly. Our house sits at the end of a tree-lined cul-de-sac with a yard full of maple leaves in autumn and hydrangeas that bloom bigger than dinner plates in summer. It isn't a grand house. It isn't expensive, but it was ours, built on memories, not money. My husband Michael and I bought it when we were both 27. We were newly married, deeply in love, and far too optimistic about how easy life would be. He worked as an electrician. I worked part-time at a local library. We saved for 5 years before we even tried to buy. And when we did, the place was half falling apart. But we didn't care. We sanded floors ourselves, painted walls at 2 a.m. while laughing at the streaks, argued about tile colors and curtain rods, put our fingerprints everywhere. Evan was born in the upstairs bedroom facing the backyard. A spring baby, the season the cherry tree blooms. He was a good kid, quiet, thoughtful, the kind who drew pictures instead of asking for toys, the kind who hugged people without embarrassment. He was always gentle-hearted, a trait I loved deeply, even though sometimes I worried the world would treat him harshly for it. When he was 16, Michael got sick, cancer, the kind you don't beat no matter how hard you try. 2 years later, Evan and I stood side by side at the funeral, holding on to each other like we were all the other had left. And in many ways, we were. Grief makes a home feel louder. Every floorboard echoing, every room feeling emptier than the last. But we learned how to live in that quiet. Together. Evan stayed home for college instead of moving across the state like he originally planned. He commuted to the community college nearby, studying graphic design. I didn't ask him to stay, but I can't say I didn't feel relief that he did. He began working part-time at a printing shop after graduation. Nothing flashy, but he liked it. He liked routine, predictability, safe spaces. Our dinners together were small but warm. Soup on cold nights, fresh bread when I felt up to baking, a movie afterward, usually something old, something familiar, something we could watch without needing to talk much. We didn't have money. But we had peace, and I thought, truly believed, that peace would stay. But several months before the marriage announcement, something began to shift. It was subtle. Barely noticeable at first. He started staying out later after work. Usually he'd call, tell me what he was doing. Grocery run, meeting a friend, going for a drive. But then the explanations became vague. Just busy. Just plans. Just out. I tried not to pry. Evan was an adult, 24. He deserved a life outside our home. I didn't want to be the kind of mother who held her child hostage with guilt or emotional dependency. But the change was there. Quiet, but unmistakable. He started dressing differently, too. Nicer shirts, new shoes, cologne he hadn't worn before. Something subtle, expensive. At first, I assumed maybe he was dating someone new. And I was happy for him, truly. I wanted him to build a life of his own, to find a partner who treated him kindly and with softness. Someone who saw the goodness in him. The kind of goodness that's rare in this world. But I expected someone like him. Someone young. Someone figuring things out. Someone who laughed easily and loved simply. Not her. I remember the first time I heard her name. Though I didn't yet know who she was, we were doing dishes together, something we had done countless times before. He dried, I washed. Music played softly in the background. One of those gentle acoustic playlists he liked. He was smiling at his phone. Not a big smile, just that small, soft kind that shows itself in the corners of the mouth. I asked casually, "Who's that?" He hesitated, just slightly, before saying, "A friend from work," except he didn't work with any new hires. His workplace rarely took on new staff. I stored the inconsistency in my mind, but said nothing. Sometimes love means not asking questions before someone is ready to answer them. Weeks passed. His absences grew longer. His explanations grew thinner, but I waited, patient, hopeful, trusting, because I believed, truly believed, that whatever he was, keeping from me couldn't be something that would hurt us. It never even crossed my mind that I could lose him. Not like this. I couldn't have imagined the way she would enter our lives, not quietly, not humbly, but with the precision of someone who had learned how to reshape a person's world. Piece by piece, but that comes later, for now. Life was still calm, still warm, still ours, and I didn't yet know that everything was already in motion. A slow-moving tide shifting beneath my feet. A tide I didn't notice until it was far too late. The first week after their announcement felt like someone had opened the windows in the dead of winter. Everything was familiar, but there was a coldness that settled in the air, quiet and sharp. No arguments, no dramatic scenes, just a silent rearranging of small things in my own house. It started with the kitchen. Marla had a way of moving into a space, to the eye, nothing drastic, nothing loud, but the meaning was unmistakable. My flour went from the lower cabinet to the upper one. The coffee maker, which had always sat by the window, was now beside the microwave. The dish towels I favored, cotton, soft, worn in, were replaced with brand new ones. Stiff and patterned with navy blue chevrons, she even changed the dish soap. A lemon-scented brand I'd used for years quietly disappeared, replaced by a bottle that smelled like eucalyptus. Sharp, sterile, like a dentist's office. She didn't ask. She didn't need to. She moved like someone who expected everything to make room for her. Evan noticed, of course. I could tell by the way he'd hesitate when making coffee, eyes pausing where things used to be. But he never commented. He'd just adjust, sigh softly, and continue. He was changing in other ways too, where he once used to text me when he got home late from work. Now I learned his schedule through overheard door closings and muffled hallway steps. He didn't sit in the living room with me on Sundays anymore. The TV went silent. The house had fewer shared moments and more closed doors. He laughed less. And when he did laugh, it ended quickly, like he was afraid joy itself might get him in trouble. Yet, I didn't blame him. I didn't resent him. Resentment is for equals. What I felt was a quiet ache, like watching someone drown slowly while convincing themselves they're learning to swim, but I stayed Gentle, patient, careful. I made small dinners, enough for 3 instead of just myself. Sometimes Evan ate with me. Sometimes he didn't. Marla never did. She always had somewhere to be, someone to call. A looming schedule, a yoga class, a PTA committee, a friend who needs support. Always an excuse that floated just above polite explanation. But she never left without saying, "Don't wait up. We'll handle ourselves. We'll handle ourselves." 3 words that said, "You're unnecessary." There were photos too, slowly appearing around the house. Not ours, not Evan's childhood or our family memories, her children, their school portraits. A trip to the zoo, holiday sweaters, framed, deliberate, displayed on the mantel where my husband's pictures once stood. It was never aggressive. Always positioned as practicality. "We need them too," she'd say lightly. One evening, while dusting, I noticed that one of my husband's photos had been moved to a lower shelf. Not removed, not hidden, just lowered, diminished. I didn't put it back. Not yet. I learned something raising a son. The strongest movements are the quiet ones. The first real conversation between us happened on a Tuesday. I was in the garden, my sanctuary. Rows of lavender, rosemary, and roses in pale blush shades. I had trimmed every plant myself for years. Hands in the soil were how I kept myself from unraveling. Marla came out barefoot, holding an iced tea like she was walking through her own backyard. "You spend a lot of time out here," she said casually. "It keeps me grounded," I replied. Clipping a wilted rosehead, she leaned against the railing, eyes scanning the space. Not admiring, assessing. "I was thinking," she said, and I could already feel the shift in temperature. "We should redo the backyard. Something modern. Maybe remove some of these flower beds. Make space for a deck. Outdoor seating. It would help when we host." We host. My hands stilled on the pruning shears. "This garden has been here for 20 years, I said softly. Her smile didn't waver. "Exactly. It's outdated. We could create something more. Useful, as if beauty required justification. As if memory had an expiration date." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Silence can be a boundary too. She exhaled, a small, annoyed breath, and went back inside. That's when I understood. She wasn't just moving into my home. She was replacing it, reshaping it, rewriting history in real time. And Evan, my sweet child, was losing pieces of himself with every choice he didn't make. That night, I found him in the pantry. Not doing anything, just standing, breathing, shoulders tight, eyes closed. "Are you all right?" I asked gently. He startled, like I'd caught him in something. "Yeah, just thinking." He forced a small smile. "Work stuff." I didn't push. I simply nodded, but as he turned away, I noticed something. He looked exhausted in a way that sleep couldn't fix. The kind of tired that comes from saying yes too many times when you mean no. The next change came quietly. One morning, I heard voices in the living room. One of them was unfamiliar, female, young, fast-talking, confident. I walked in to find a realtor, neatly dressed, clipboard in hand. Smiling wide, Marla was giving her a tour, not asking, not notifying, showing. As you can see, the windows are original. We'd probably renovate before putting it on the market. But the neighborhood value is exceptional, so with the right updates, the realtor noticed me first and straightened. "Oh, you must be the homeowner," I said. Marla's smile tightened. "We were just exploring possibilities," she said lightly. "Exploring possibilities. Selling my home, my husband's home. The place where Evan took his first steps. Where we marked his height on the pantry wall every birthday. Where my husband and I slow danced after midnight when the world was too loud. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't demand explanations. I didn't lose dignity. I simply looked at Marla and I smiled. Not a friendly smile, a knowing one. Because now I understood. This wasn't emotional. This wasn't personal. This was strategy, and if she came with strategy, then she would receive strategy. She thought I was soft because I was quiet. She thought patience meant surrender. She mistook gentleness for weakness. I have survived grief. I have buried a husband. I have raised a child alone. I have rebuilt myself from ruins and silence. She had no idea what kind of war she had stepped into, and wars like mine are not fought loudly. They are won quietly, one move at a time. It was a Thursday when I noticed the first real crack. Not a dramatic discovery, not a confrontation, just a detail, small enough to ignore, sharp enough to wound if held too long. I was in the kitchen packing up leftovers from dinner. Evan had eaten with me that night, something he hadn't done in a while. It wasn't planned. He just walked in, sat down, and we ate together in silence. Not uncomfortable silence, just quiet, familiar, the kind we used to have. He looked tired. The kind of tired that sits behind the eyes. The kind that comes from being pulled in opposite directions. When he finished his meal, he thanked me, softly, almost like apology, and went upstairs. But he left his phone on the counter. Evan never left his phone anywhere. He carried it the way some people carry inhalers, like it was necessary to function. I didn't touch it. I didn't even move toward it, but it lit up. One new message. Name Jordan Jim. Text, she came again. Waiting by the entrance. Said you forgot something. I didn't intend to read it. I just saw it. The screen dimmed, then lit up again. Another message. You okay, man? She didn't look right. I stared at the phone for a long time, not touching. Just breathing. Marla didn't go to Evan's gym. She had her own, one with heated yoga rooms and eucalyptus steam towels. Evan went to a simple one. Cheap, no vanity. Sweat, weights, old metal, and a single water cooler. Her showing up there didn't make sense. Unless she was watching him. Unless she was monitoring him. Unless he wasn't allowed to go anywhere alone. Footsteps sounded on the stairs. I stepped back from the counter as if distance proved innocence. Evan walked in and reached for his phone. He saw the unread messages, paused. His face didn't change. Not fear. Not guilt. Just resignation. Like he was already used to being observed. He put the phone in his pocket. Long day? I asked. He nodded. Yeah. You don't have to explain, I said softly. His eyes flicked toward mine, just for a second. I saw something there. Not trust. Not relief. Hope. The kind that barely survives. Then it was gone. He went upstairs again. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house felt different in darkness. Not haunted. Controlled. A quiet chessboard waiting for someone to make the wrong move. I got up to make tea. The living room light was on. Marla sat on the couch, legs crossed. Hair perfectly pinned back, scrolling through her phone with the ease of someone who never worried about being seen. She didn't look up when I entered. Everything all right? I asked. Yes. Not warm, not cold. Just final. I poured boiling water into a mug. You and Evan seemed tense today, I said. We're fine. She said it like a door closing. I didn't push. I stirred honey into the tea slowly, letting the silence sit long enough to reveal discomfort. Finally, she spoke. He's been distracted. I didn't look at her. Distracted how? Ungrateful, she said. The word hit like a blade. My son. My gentle, soft-hearted, steady son. Ungrateful, I turned to look at her fully. Evan has given up a lot to adjust to changes, I said. That takes time, she smiled. Not kind. Not polite, calculated. He doesn't need time, she said. He needs direction. Direction. A simple word with a clear meaning. Control. I took my tea and sat in the chair across from her, keeping my posture relaxed, the kind of calm that makes people underestimate you. I see, I said. And you're the one giving him that? She didn't hesitate. Yes, someone has to. Someone. Not him. Not us. Not together. Her. She slipped her phone into her lap. You should know something, she said. I waited. Evan listens to you. Too much sometimes. The room widened in an instant. Not physically. Emotionally. Is that a problem? I asked. It could be, she replied, if it gets in the way of progress. Progress. Her word for rearranging his life into something that looked like hers. Evan respects me, I said. That's not something you should be concerned about. Her expression didn't change, but something in her eyes sharpened, like glass catching sunlight. That depends, she said. On what? On whether you stay in your role. My role? Yes. She leaned back. Mother, supportive, present, but not interfering. I placed my tea on the coffee table, very gently. Marla, I said softly. I raised that boy. I taught him how to walk, how to read, how to be kind, how to be patient. I sat beside him when he learned to tie his shoes, and when he applied for his first job, and when he buried his father. My role is not negotiable, and it does not shrink to make space for anyone. Her smile never faltered, but she blinked. Once, slowly, a small victory, invisible, significant. She stood, smoothing her shirt. I hope you understand what I'm saying, she said. I do, I replied. More than you think. She went upstairs. I sat in the quiet, not shaking. Not distressed, clear, because now I had the first real proof. Her control wasn't accidental. It wasn't emotional insecurity. It was strategy, and Evan wasn't her partner. He was her project, the garden. The photos, the house, his schedule, his friends, his gym. Piece by piece she was isolating him, not breaking him, refitting him into something she could own. This wasn't the end, this was the beginning, and like all beginnings. It was quiet, deliberate, and dangerous. The next sign came quietly, like most truths that matter. It was Saturday morning, and the house smelled of coffee and cinnamon, always baked on Saturdays. It was a small ritual that steadied me. Evan used to sit at the counter and steal pieces of dough when he thought I wasn't looking. He'd grin when I caught him, wide, guilty, boyish. That morning, he didn't come into the kitchen, but Marla did. She walked in wearing one of those pale gray workout sets that looked more like a uniform than clothing. Perfect, seamless, controlled. Her hair was pulled back into a tight bun, and she carried her phone in one hand and a glass water bottle in the other. She didn't say good morning. Just place the bottle on the counter with deliberate precision. I'll need the kitchen in an hour, she said. I didn't look up from kneading the dough. For what? I'm hosting brunch, she replied. Some friends are coming. Oh, I said. I wasn't aware. No, she agreed. I didn't think it was necessary to tell you. The dough beneath my hands softened, warm and pliable. Something inside me did not. And Evan? I asked. He'll be there, she said. Don't worry. I'll handle the menu. I didn't say anything at first. I just kept kneading. Well, I said eventually, this house has always welcomed guests. I just wish you had told me earlier. I would have prepared more food. That won't be necessary, she said. Your cooking is comforting, but not quite. Presentable. She smiled politely. A compliment dressed as dismissal. I wiped my hands slowly on a towel. My cooking has fed this family for 20 years. Yes, she said lightly. And now things are changing. There it was again. Change, progress, direction. Words that sound generous. But feel like erasing. I didn't respond. I simply nodded, once, and continued shaping the dough. But I knew something then. She didn't want to share space. She wanted to replace it. Her brunch guests arrived exactly at noon. All women, all impeccably styled. Loose waves, manicured nails, monochrome outfits in soft, neutral tones. They spoke in low, curated voices, as if someone were recording them. I stayed in the kitchen, not hiding, just observing. The conversation floated through the doorway like perfume, light at first, then sharp. He's adjusting so well for his age, one of them said. Oh, he's just impressionable, another replied, tapping her fingernail against her glass. Marla laughed. I prefer the word moldable, my chest tightened. Not with anger, with realization. Evan wasn't her husband. He was her project, her redesign, her rehabilitation of grief and loneliness, sculpted into obedience. I walked into the dining room then, not loud, not dramatic, calm, present. Oh, one of the women whispered. Marla turned, a flicker of annoyance crossing her features before she smoothed it again. I didn't realize you were joining us, she said. I live here, I replied gently. I thought that meant I could sit in my own dining room. A few of the women shifted, uncertain whose side they should appear on. Marla laughed lightly, dismissing the tension. Of course. Please sit. I sat beside Evan. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at anyone. He stared at his hands folded in his lap, the same way a child sits in a waiting room before a doctor calls their name. I touched his elbow lightly. He flinched, not away from me, but like he hadn't expected to be touched. "Are you all right?" I whispered. He nodded once. "Too fast." Marla's eyes didn't leave us, as if she was waiting to see how much of him still belonged to me. The conversation continued, but there was nothing casual about it. They discussed property values, retirement accounts, estate transfers, home equity, not in theory, in terms of my house. "Our goal," one of the women said, "our goal is to consolidate everything in one legal unit. It gives stability?" Marla nodded. "Exactly. And since Evan and I are the only privately married pair with a property asset," her hand gestured lightly toward my home, my dining room, my kitchen, my life. I set my fork down carefully. "Just to clarify," I said softly, "no transfer of ownership has been agreed to, and there will be none." The room fell still, except for Marla's smile. It didn't falter, but something sharpened beneath it. "Well," she said, voice like honey poured over ice, "we'll cross that bridge when everyone is ready, not if." When Evan finally looked up, at her, at me, caught between, he swallowed. "Mom," he said quietly, "can we talk later?" The room watched us the way people watch a lit stove. I placed my hand over his, warm, steady, not pleading. "Yes," I said. "We can talk. Just us." Marla's jaw moved, a muscle, barely visible, the first clear sign she understood. She had not completed the remodel yet. There were still walls standing. Later that night, after everyone left and the dishes were washed and the house returned to silence, I heard something, not a sound, a feeling. The feeling of someone watching from a doorway. I turned. Marla stood there in the hall. "You need to learn," she said quietly, almost kindly, "that love can make people do things they never thought they would." "And I love him too," I held her gaze, "and I was loving him. Before you even knew his name." She stepped closer. "Only one step, but it changed everything. This house is too big for one woman," she whispered, and she walked away. Not a threat, a blueprint. She was already imagining where my absence would go. I didn't go searching for the truth. I want to be very clear about that. I didn't snoop, sneak, spy, or pry. The truth simply found me, like a door left ajar that the wind pushes open. It was late evening when it happened. I was upstairs, changing the sheets in the guest room. Marla had insisted on converting it into a yoga and meditation space, but I kept it exactly as it was. I told her a home should always have a place for someone to land unexpectedly. She didn't respond. She rarely did when I said things that meant something. I heard muffled voices downstairs, Evan's and Marla's. Not angry, not raised. Just urgent, the kind of urgency you hear when something is being decided, not discussed. I paused at the top of the stairs, not eavesdropping, just listening in my own home. "She won't react well," Evan said. Marla spoke gently. "She'll adapt. People like her always do, people like her." As if I were a category, a demographic, a stereotype of stubborn mothers clinging to their sons. Evan's voice cracked, not loud, but enough for a mother to hear it through walls. "But she's always been here." "This house it's just a house," Marla said firmly, the softness gone now. "It's not her life, and you and I are building ours." Silence. A full minute, maybe more. Then Evan whispered, "I need time." "We don't have time," Marla replied. Something inside me rang like a warning bell that had been waiting to sound. I took one step down the staircase, just one. The floor creaked. Their conversation stopped. Instantly, I continued walking, slow, measured, civilized. By the time I reached the living room, they were sitting several inches apart, but their tension sat between them like a third presence. I folded my arms loosely, unthreatening. "A mother talking to her child. What don't we have time for?" I asked softly. Evan looked at me, his eyes flickering with guilt, love, and fear all at once. Marla didn't look away. "We're considering refinancing the house," she said calmly. "Putting both our names on the deed. It's practical." "Practical?" I repeated. "Or strategic?" She smiled, small and polite. "Same difference depending on who's looking." The room didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a room full of strangers wearing familiar clothing. I looked at Evan, not as a son, as a man making decisions he didn't fully understand. "Did you agree to this?" I asked. His lips parted. His breath trembled. Marla said, his voice cracked. "She said it would protect us, legally, if something happened to you, if something happened to me." The phrasing hung heavy. Like a vase suspended before shattering, I nodded slowly. "Not angry, just grieving." "Evan," I said, "this house is paid for. There is no mortgage, no debt, no danger of repossession. The only reason to refinance it is to borrow against it." He swallowed. He didn't deny it. Marla leaned forward, elbows rested lightly on her knees, like a therapist explaining a diagnosis. "We want to start a business. Something of our own, something stable, something future-proof. This house can give us that foundation." "This house," I said quietly, "is your foundation. It is already yours. You grew up in it." "That's the problem," she said gently. "He grew up here. And now he needs to grow out of it, out of your shadow." My heart didn't break. It set, cold, clear, still. "Evan," I said, "have you signed anything?" He didn't answer with words. He didn't need to. His silence was a confession. I walked to him, slowly. He didn't move. I cupped his face in my hands, the way I did when he was 5 and afraid of thunderstorms. "My boy," I whispered, "what did you sign?" His eyes finally lifted to mine, and there it was, regret. He didn't answer with excuses. He answered with truth. "A power of attorney," he said, voice shaking. "Temporary, so she could sign property documents while I was at work." It was supposed to be symbolic. I didn't think. I exhaled through my nose, steadying the ground beneath me. "You didn't read it," I said. Not accusing, just acknowledging. He blinked hard. "No," Marla spoke then, lightly, logically, as if discussing weather. "Evan trusts me, as he should. That trust is the basis of partnership, and partnership requires shared assets. Partnership," I repeated softly, "requires honesty." She tilted her head. "Honesty is a matter of perspective." "No," I said. "It isn't." Her eyes hardened, barely. But enough. The mask slipped for one fraction of 1 second. That was all I needed. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't plead. I simply said, "This house will not be refinanced, and no title change will be filed. And if either of you try to move forward with this, I will contest it with every legal and moral resource I have." Marla didn't blink. Evan's face fell. Relief and panic tangled together. Marla stood up then, slow, elegant. She walked closer, not threatening, just present. "Evan and I are building a life," she said softly, "and you're welcome to be part of it. But you cannot own it, and you cannot own him." "I don't own my son," I replied. "I raised him." She smiled like she pitied me. "And now," she said gently, "I am." The air left the room. Not dramatically, just gone. I turned toward Evan. "Do you want this?" I asked, direct, simple, fair. His voice was a whisper. "I don't know. Not yes. Not no, just lost." And that was worse, because a man who does not know what he wants will follow the one who does. Later that night, when the house had quieted and the lamps cast long shadows across the walls, I sat alone at the dining table, hands still, breath even. I understood then. This was not a marriage. This was an acquisition, and I was the final obstacle. The widow had not come for my son's love. She had come for his foundation, for the roof over his head, for the keys in his hand, for the inheritance of a life she did not build. And she believed that because she was older, disciplined, experienced, elegant, she would win. Because why shouldn't she? She had already convinced him that he owed her something he never promised. But she didn't understand something. You can replace habits. You can replace routines. You can replace influence. But you cannot replace roots. And this house, this home, was a root she had not yet figured out how to dig up. She would. She planned to. I knew that now, and I also knew I would not lose quietly. The air inside the house felt wrong, thick, heavy, almost electric. Emily stood in the entryway, clutching her phone so tightly the edges cut into her palm. The kitchen light was on, glowing warm and soft, yet there was no warmth inside her. The world felt distant, blurry. It was as though she were watching herself from outside her own body. She walked down the hallway slowly, hearing the faint hum of the refrigerator and the quiet ticking of the clock on the wall. Each step felt heavier than the last. Michael was home. She heard movement upstairs, drawers closing, footsteps, the rustle of clothing. Her heart pounded hard enough that she could feel it in her throat. For a moment she considered turning around, leaving, stalling, anything to avoid the words that were coming. But no, this was the moment everything had been building toward. The messages, the lipstick, the perfume, the lies. She walked up the stairs. Michael stepped out of their bedroom just as she reached the landing. He was wearing a navy t-shirt and sweatpants, hair still damp from the gym or maybe a shower. He looked normal, ordinary, like a husband coming home to his wife. "Hey," he said softly, offering a small smile. "You're back early." Early. Her chest tightened. Emily didn't speak. She simply held up her phone, the screen still open to the message thread. Michael's eyes landed on it. And in an instant, his expression changed. It wasn't shock. It wasn't confusion. It was recognition. He knew exactly what she'd seen. His jaw clenched. His shoulders shifted. The easy casualness drained out of him. Emily's voice came out steady, far steadier than she felt. "Who is she?" Michael exhaled slowly, dragging a hand through his hair. His eyes darted away, not toward shame, but toward calculation. He was choosing his angle, his defense, his strategy. "Emily," he began, stepping forward slightly, "I need you to listen to me before you jump to conclusions." Her laugh was sharp, pained. "Jump to conclusions? I read the messages. I read everything." His eyebrows tightened again. There it was, that flicker of annoyance. Like she was the problem. Like she was overreacting. "She means nothing," he said quickly. "It wasn't. It's not what you think." "You called her beautiful," Emily said, her voice low. "You told her you miss her. You told her you wish you could see her every day." Michael's silence was immediate, heavy. His face fell into an expression that might have looked like remorse to an outsider. But Emily knew him too well. It wasn't remorse. It was being caught. Emily took a step forward. "How long?" Michael rubbed his forehead. "A few months? It just happened. You've been so distant and work has been stressful and—" "No," Emily cut in sharply. "Do not blame me for this." Her voice shook, not from weakness, but from fury she could barely contain. "You chose this. You made every single choice leading to this." Michael opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." Emily stared at him. "Do you love her?" A long beat. "Too long." "No," he said finally. But the hesitation, the delay, the pause, it was an answer all its own. Emily felt the ground tilt. Her throat burned. There was a ringing in her ears, loud and constant. "Do you understand what you've done to me?" she whispered. Michael's expression flickered. Guilt this time, maybe, or at least something close to it. "Emily, I swear I never wanted to hurt you. It got out of control. I'll end it, I will. I'll end it today." The room felt cold. Emily felt colder. "You already made your choice," she said quietly. "You chose her. Every time you texted her. Every time you lied to me. Every time you came home and kissed me like nothing was happening." A tear slipped down her cheek, but she didn't wipe it away. "You chose her." Michael reached out, very slowly, like approaching a frightened animal. "I still choose you. I'm here. I came home. I didn't leave." Emily stepped backward. "That's not choosing me," she whispered. "That's choosing convenience, stability, the version of your life that makes you look like a good man." Michael's jaw tightened. "I am a good man," Emily stared at him in disbelief. A good man doesn't do what you did. He exhaled sharply, angry now. You don't understand. You haven't even tried to understand, Emily laughed, a hollow, broken sound. I have spent years understanding you, supporting you, cleaning up your messes, encouraging your dreams. I built this life with you. Michael's voice rose. And I've given you everything. Silence. Not the normal kind, the kind that feels like a glass shattering. Emily swallowed hard. Everything? Everything. She remembered the nights he forgot her birthday while working late. The vacations canceled because of business trips. The promises broken. The exhaustion. The trying. The loving. The waiting. He didn't give her everything. She gave him everything. Emily looked at him. Really looked at him. At the man she had once loved so deeply, she believed they were fused, inseparable, unstoppable. And now she saw him clearly. A man who thought love was ownership. A man who thought loyalty was one-sided. A man who believed he could hurt her and she would stay because she always had. Emily's voice was soft. Too soft, almost gentle. Where did you meet her? Michael hesitated again. Work. Emily felt something inside her snap, silently, cleanly, like a thread that had been holding everything together just let go. Work, the gym bag, the perfume, the sudden late nights. It all lined up now. She doesn't know about me, does she? Emily asked. Michael's silence was the answer. Emily nodded once, slow, controlled. You hid me, she said. You hid your wife, Michael's face twisted. Because I didn't want to drag her into our personal problems. Our problems? Emily repeated. You mean your affair? Michael shut his eyes. Emily, please, just stop. But she didn't. She stepped past him into the bedroom, opened the closet, pulled out a suitcase. You don't need to pack, Michael said quickly, panic creeping into his voice. We can fix this. We can talk to someone. We can go to counseling. Emily, please. She didn't look at him. She didn't speak. She just packed. Not much. Just enough. Enough that she could leave tonight. Enough that she could breathe somewhere else. Michael stepped forward and grabbed her wrist, not rough, but firm. Don't leave, he said, voice breaking. Emily, I'm begging you. Don't walk out on us. Emily looked at his hand on her wrist, then up at his face. You walked out first, she said quietly. You just didn't physically leave. She pulled her hand away. Michael stood frozen, as though the world had shifted under him and he had no idea how to stand anymore. Emily zipped the suitcase. The sound was final, severing, irreversible. She picked it up and walked toward the stairs. Michael followed. Emily, please, please. She paused at the front door. Turned back one last time. Her eyes were full, not of love, not of hatred, but of clarity. You broke something that doesn't get fixed, she said. Then she walked out. The door closed behind her, and for the first time since the story began, Emily did not look back. The night air was cool, against Emily's face as she walked. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't stay. Her feet moved on instinct, guided by something deeper than thought. The streetlights blurred slightly, and it took her a moment to realize she was crying. Not the loud, gut-wrenching sobs of heartbreak, but the silent kind. The kind that feels like years of weight finally slipping loose. She reached her car, unlocked it with trembling fingers, and sat inside without starting the engine. The quiet was deafening. Her hands rested on the steering wheel, but she didn't hold it. She didn't move. She just breathed. In, out, her chest hurt. Not sharp pain, more like a bruise deep inside, tender and sore. Her wedding ring felt heavy, suddenly unbearable on her finger. She twisted it once, twice, then slid it off. She set it on the passenger seat. The tiny sound of metal touching fabric felt enormous. For a few minutes, she sat there frozen. Then her phone buzzed. Michael. Of course. Come back, please. We need to talk. I didn't mean for this to happen. I love you. Emily didn't respond. She put the phone face down and finally turned the key. She drove to Olivia's house. Olivia didn't ask questions when she opened the door. One look at Emily's face, and she simply stepped aside, pulling her into a quiet, steady hug. The kind of hug that didn't demand explanation. They didn't speak for several minutes. They didn't need to. Finally, Olivia guided her to the kitchen, poured her a glass of water, and sat with her at the table. Emily stared at the surface of the table. Her voice, when it came, was barely audible. He cheated. The word hung in the air like smoke. Olivia's jaw tightened. Her eyes closed briefly, as if choosing restraint over explosion. "With who?" she asked. "A woman from work," Emily whispered. "For months?" Olivia shook her head slowly, anger sharpening her expression. "I always knew something was off with him." Emily's eyes flickered up, tired, almost defeated. "Why didn't I know?" "Because you loved him," Olivia said simply. "And people who love deeply don't go looking for reasons to doubt." Emily's throat tightened. They sat in silence. Not empty silence, safe silence. Finally, Emily said, "I left." Olivia nodded once. "Good." The word was firm, solid, certain. Emily exhaled shakily. Leaving hadn't felt strong. It had felt like falling apart. But hearing it called good made something inside her steady, just a little. They ended up talking late into the night. Emily told her everything, every clue, every doubt, every moment of denial. And Olivia listened. Really listened, without interrupting, without minimizing, without trying to fix it. Eventually, exhaustion took over. Olivia made up the guest room, dimmed the lights, and left Emily alone. Emily lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling. The house was quiet, safe, warm, but nothing felt real. Her mind replayed everything: his face, his silence, the hesitation before answering whether he loved her. That hesitation cut deeper than any confession could have. Emily turned onto her side and curled her knees to her chest. Her chest ached, her throat burned, and then, finally, she cried, not silently this time. It came in waves, raw, unfiltered grief. Years of love, trust, hope, pulled out of her at once. She buried her face in the pillow and let it happen. The next morning, she woke with swollen eyes and a headache. The kind that felt like pressure behind the skull. The kind heartbreak always leaves behind. She checked her phone. 7 messages. 13 missed calls. Voicemails. She didn't listen to any of them. Instead, she opened her group chat with Olivia and another friend, Mia. Her fingers typed slowly. He cheated. "I left. I'm at Liv's. I'm okay." The message wasn't entirely true, but it didn't have to be. Mia replied instantly, "I'm on my way." Emily didn't protest. She didn't have the energy to. An hour later, Mia arrived with coffee, breakfast sandwiches, and the kind of righteous fury only best friends can carry. The 3 of them sat together, Emily in the middle, Mia at her right, Olivia on her left. Like a shield, Mia was the first to speak. "What's the plan?" Emily shook her head. "I don't know yet." "Do you want him back?" Olivia asked gently. The question wasn't harsh. It wasn't judgmental. It was real, Emily thought. She thought of their early years, the trips, the laughter, the dreams whispered at 2 a.m. She thought of the home they built together, the money saved, the traditions formed. She thought of the birthdays, the holidays, the routines. Then she thought of the lipstick, the perfume, the messages, the lies. Her voice came out quiet but sure. "No." Mia nodded firmly. "Then we move forward," Emily swallowed. Forward felt impossible. Forward felt like walking through mud, but she nodded. For the next few hours, they made a plan, not emotional, not dramatic, practical. Emily would stay at Olivia's for now. She would not respond to Michael yet. She would take time to process before making legal or financial decisions. No impulsive forgiveness. No emotional negotiations. No half measures, clarity first, action second. Emily felt both fragile and strangely grounded, like her world had shattered, but she had survived the impact. But Michael didn't stop. He kept calling, kept texting, "Please come home. We can fix this. I love you. I made a mistake. Don't throw our life away. Please." Each message was like a small crack tapping at her heart, not because she believed him, but because there had been a time she would have died to hear those words. Her throat tightened as she read one message. "Can't lose you." She didn't reply. She blocked his number. The silence that followed was loud, but also clean, like air finally clearing after a storm. That evening, Emily stepped outside onto Olivia's small back porch. The sunset was soft, pink and orange bleeding into each other. Birds chirped in the distance. Life went on, indifferent to the war inside her. She wrapped her arms around herself. She didn't feel strong. She didn't feel brave. She didn't feel healed. But she felt awake, and for the first time since discovering the truth, she felt the faintest, smallest spark of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Self. The next morning, I woke up feeling strangely steady. Not healed, not even close, but anchored, as if the storm had passed its loudest point, and now the rest was the long, slow work of clearing debris. I showered, tied my hair back, and borrowed one of Olivia's sweaters. It was soft and oversized, something comforting to wrap myself in. When I stepped into the kitchen, Mia was already there. Toast popping from the toaster, coffee brewing. They looked at me, not with pity, but with readiness. "We need to go to the house," I said quietly. Olivia didn't ask why. Mia didn't ask if I was sure. They just nodded. The drive back to my house was quiet. I stared out the window, watching familiar streets pass by like scenes from a life I used to have. My hands were cold. I rubbed them together, but the chill was inside, not outside. When we pulled into the driveway, Michael's car was there. Of course it was. My heart thudded, but I didn't panic. I took a slow breath. I reminded myself, this is my home, my life, my decision. Olivia walked beside me like a silent wall of strength. Mia hovered slightly behind, ready to intercept if needed. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house smelled the same. Coffee, laundry detergent, the faint scent of the lemon candle I always burned. It should have felt familiar. It should have felt safe. Instead, it felt like a crime scene. Michael was sitting on the edge of the couch. He stood up quickly when he saw me. His face was tired, blotchy. He'd been crying. "Emily," he started. I held up a hand. "No, not yet." He stopped. His mouth closed. His eyes glossed again, and for a moment I saw not a betrayer, but the man I had loved. That hurt more than anger ever could. I walked past him and headed for the bedroom. Olivia and Mia followed without speaking. I opened my closet and began packing. Not everything. Not with rage. Just what I needed. Clothes, toiletries, a few books. My journal. Michael stood in the doorway watching. I could feel him wanting to speak, to explain, to beg, but I kept moving. Finally, he said, voice cracking, "Emily, please. Can we talk? Just talk?" I paused. The silence sat between us like something heavy. I turned to him. My voice came out clear. "You can talk. I will listen. But I am not staying here today." He nodded quickly, desperate, hopeful. Okay, please, sit with me." We moved to the living room. Olivia and Mia stepped outside to give us space, but not far. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. Years of shared life compressed into the space between us. Michael spoke first. "I messed up. I know that. I know I betrayed you." His voice shook. "I don't have an excuse. I don't know why I did it. Or maybe I do. I kept feeling like I didn't know myself anymore. Like I was fading. And then she—" His voice faltered. Her. The woman he had chosen instead of me. He continued, softer, ashamed. "She made me feel seen. And I let myself believe that meant something. I was wrong. I see that now." I let out a slow breath. "And what about me, Michael? Did you see me?" His chin trembled. I thought I did. Silence. A painful, knowing silence. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I didn't list every lie or every night he came home late or every moment I questioned myself. Instead, I spoke the truth that had been forming quietly inside me since I left. "You took something from me that I cannot get back." He bowed his head. I wasn't trying to shame him. I was stating fact. Trust is not a vase you can glue back together. It is water spilled into the dirt. Once it's gone, it's gone. He whispered, "Do you want to try to fix it?" The ache in his voice almost pulled me under, but I shook my head. "I don't know who I am here anymore." He closed his eyes. A tear slipped down. I continued, voice steady. "I need space. I need time. And I need distance. I'm not filing for divorce today, but I am leaving the house, and you will respect that, he nodded. Not because he agreed, because he understood he had no right to ask anything of me anymore. I stood. Olivia and Mia came back in, silently reading the room. We carried my bags out. As I reached the door, Michael spoke again. Soft, small, broken. I'm sorry, Emily. This time, I didn't freeze. I didn't crumble. I just nodded. I know. And I left. Back at Olivia's, I sat on her porch again, same place as the night before, but something was different now, not healed. Not whole, but awake. Leaving wasn't the moment of collapse. It was the moment of choosing myself, even if I didn't know what came next, even if I was scared, even if the future looked like fog. There was a quiet power in it, a seed of something new, not hope. Not yet, but possibility, and that was enough. Word traveled, as it always does in small towns, not immediately, not explosively, but slowly, steadily, like a scent carried on the wind. At first, people didn't know the details, just that I was living with Olivia, just that Michael was staying in the house alone, just that something had shifted. But in a town where neighbors notice which curtains are open and whose trash bin is left crooked on trash day, silence is news. I didn't go out much in the first week. I wasn't hiding. I just didn't have the emotional muscle yet to perform normalcy. But Olivia needed to get groceries one afternoon. And I went with her because life does not pause just because your heart has shattered. The grocery store was the same as always. Cold air, the hum of refrigerators, the faint scent of citrus hand soap from the produce spray stations. But the moment we walked in, the air felt different. Thicker eyes pulled toward me like magnets, some full of quiet sympathy, some curious, some, my least favorite, eager. People love tragedy when it isn't their own. I kept my gaze forward. Olivia stood just slightly closer to me than usual, a subtle shield. We were halfway past the canned goods aisle when someone finally said it out loud. Her name was Joanne, former PTA treasurer, a woman who always greeted with warmth so rehearsed it could be bottled and labeled as Southern politeness. She approached us with a face full of practiced concern. Oh, honey, I heard. I'm so sorry to hear what you're going through. Her voice hovered on the edge of pity, the kind that isn't about you at all, but about the thrill of being in the know. I held her gaze. I didn't shrink. Thank you, I said simply. That was it. But she lingered, hungry for more. I just can't imagine. Bless your heart. Men can be so. Olivia stepped in smoothly, kindly, but firmly. We're just grabbing a few things today. Hope you're well, Joanne. A dismissal so polite it almost sounded like kindness. Joanne blinked, startled, then retreated, her cart squeaking away. We didn't say anything until we were back in the car. Then Olivia exhaled. It's starting, she said, and I nodded, but the real shift came a few days later, because the town did not yet know why I'd left. That changed when someone saw Michael and her, the woman, together. Happened at the cafe on Main Street, a place where every cup of coffee came with a side of observation. A friend of Olivia's saw them sitting together, talking quietly, close enough to look intimate. And then, someone else saw them at the hardware store later that same day. By the next morning, the story was already halfway formed without me ever saying a word. When betrayal becomes public knowledge, something strange happens. The shame that was once on the betrayed begins to shift to the betrayer. People who had greeted Michael warmly for years now hesitated. People who had once waved eagerly now avoided eye contact. Not out of cruelty, out of discomfort, because people don't want to see themselves in the person who destroys the person who loved them. He had always been well-liked. Not the life of the party, but steady, reliable, kind, or so everyone thought. So when the truth began to surface, the town didn't react loudly. No gossiping in crowds. No dramatic whispering. No public spectacle. It was quieter than that. A neighbor who didn't wave back. A coworker who didn't make small talk. A cashier who didn't ask about his day. The kind of silence that feels like a mirror held too close. I didn't revel in it. I didn't feel vindicated. If anything, I felt tired. Betrayal doesn't feel better, just because more people know it happened. But there was something about the weight shifting that let me breathe a little easier, because the story was no longer twisted inside me like something poisonous with no place to go. It was out there, not because I told it, but because truth always finds oxygen. Then came the first time I saw her in public. It was at the pharmacy. She was standing in line, holding a small basket with shampoo and cough drops. She looked older in person than she had in the photo I'd seen. Her hair was pulled back in a tight, severe bun. Her posture was rigid. Her expression was not triumphant, not smug, not even confident. It was tired, very tired. She saw me before I saw her. And when I noticed her, we simply looked at each other. No words. No dramatic confrontation. No theatrics. Just two women standing on opposite sides of a chasm neither of us could cross. Her face flickered. Guilt, fear, regret, something else. But I didn't look away, I didn't flinch, I didn't offer kindness. I simply acknowledged the truth of what stood between us. She was the person Michael had chosen, but she was also the person who had to live with being the reason our marriage broke. There is no triumph in that role. Not. Really, when the pharmacist finally called her forward, she walked quickly, head down, and I exhaled. Not relief. Closure is not a door that slams shut. It is a window gradually opening, just enough air to breathe. The first real consequence didn't come from the town. It came from within Michael's own circle. A few weeks after I moved into Olivia's house, Olivia and I walked into the church on Sunday morning. Nothing dramatic, just the same ritual I'd followed for years. Same wooden pews, same stained glass windows glowing soft amber in the morning sun, same hymnal pages, worn soft from hands that turned them every week. But people notice who sits where, and they notice when someone doesn't sit where they used to. I took my place beside Olivia instead of in the fourth pew on the left, our pew, the one Michael and I had shared for almost 20 years. People saw that. They felt the absence of us together before they even understood it. The service ended. People filtered out to the lot in small clusters, murmuring politely. And that's when Pastor Ray approached me, soft-voiced, steady-eyed, gentle in the way people are when they are choosing each word carefully, afraid of placing them wrong. I haven't seen Michael in a few Sundays, he said. So there it was. Another silence filling a space that used to be shared. I nodded. We're not living together right now. His eyes widened a fraction. Not gossip, not shock, just understanding. The kind that comes from witnessing 100 private heartbreaks over the years. I'm sorry, he said. Truly. I believed him. But the real shift happened a week later, when Michael finally came back to church. He walked in alone. No wife. No children. No explanation. You could feel the air move. Not like a gasp. Not like a whisper. More like the room collectively realized it needed to rearrange itself. He tried to sit in our pew. Fourth row, left side. But the thing about pews is, they're not just seats. They're history. People turned. Subtle glances, soft but undeniable. Not rejecting him, not attacking, just recognizing. There is a difference between being seen and being known. He ended up sitting farther back, near the aisle, and when the service ended, only 2 people spoke to him. 2. Not because people were cruel, but because betrayal changes your shape in the memory of others. They don't know how to hold you anymore. Meanwhile, life with Olivia and Lily found its rhythm. Morning coffee on the porch. Meals cooked together, quiet evenings with movie reruns and blankets. A kind of gentle, feminine household peace I didn't know I needed. One evening, Olivia and I sat outside as twilight settled, a soft purple wash behind the pine trees. Fireflies blinked across the yard like flecks of gold floating in slow motion. It was the kind of night where silence felt like a language of its own. She was peeling an orange, slow, neat, each strip of rind coming off in a clean curl. She didn't look up when she spoke. "What are you going to do when the divorce is finalized?" she asked. It wasn't a question about logistics, it was a question about identity, who I would become now that my life wasn't defined by wife of. I swallowed. The air felt cool, but my chest felt warm, like something inside was waking up after being asleep for too long. "I don't know yet," I said, "but I want peace. Not revenge, not bitterness, just peace." Olivia nodded, as if she had expected that answer. "You'll get there," she said. "You're already closer than you think." The next public consequence came from the school, of all places. Lily had been quiet about everything. She never asked questions she didn't need answers to, but children sense things, especially shifts in adult worlds. One afternoon, when Olivia picked her up, the teacher, Mrs. Hadley, pulled her aside. "We had an issue with name-calling today," she said. "A few kids repeated something they heard at home." Olivia tensed. "What was said?" Mrs. Hadley hesitated, clearly choosing whether it was kinder to smooth the truth or give it plainly. "They said Lily's aunt's husband left because he was with the lady from the hardware store. There. It was." The story had migrated from adults to children, as stories always eventually do. Lily didn't cry. She didn't snap back. She simply turned away and sat alone during recess. Because when you're a child, you don't have language for betrayal. You only feel the shifting of what used to be safe. That night, when I tucked her in, she finally asked, "Did he stop loving you?" And I felt something fragile crack, not break, not shatter, just open. I sat on the edge of the bed and smoothed her hair away from her forehead. "Sometimes," I said softly, "love doesn't go away. It just changes shape, and sometimes it changes into something that isn't good anymore." She nodded slowly. Then, "But you still love us, right?" A question that held an entire universe. I smiled. "And I meant it. Yes, I do. And that part doesn't change." Her shoulders relaxed. She closed her eyes, and she slept, and I realized something. Betrayal may have broken my marriage, but I was building something softer, stronger, truer now. Not a replacement, a beginning. The months that followed were not glamorous or dramatic or cinematic. They were slow, quiet, painfully ordinary. Healing, Alex found, wasn't a single moment of breakthrough. It was repetition. Days of simply getting up, making breakfast, answering messages, showing up to the gym, sleeping alone, walking past memories that used to feel warm, now rough-edged. Healing was not a victory march. It was learning how to take the next step when every step still hurt. One thing he learned quickly: grief does not move in a straight line. Some days felt strong, steady, hopeful even. Then some random scent, or a song, or a stranger's laugh in a grocery store would pull him back into memory like a riptide. But he stayed committed to moving forward. Not away from the past, just beyond it. His therapist suggested journaling. Alex hated the idea at first. It felt pointless to write down pain when he already lived it. But one evening, after a particularly quiet Sunday, he sat down, pen in hand, and began. He didn't write about Morgan or Daniel. He didn't write about betrayal. He wrote about himself, what he wanted, what he never allowed himself to want. His handwriting shook at first, but soon it flowed. "I want a life where I don't apologize for needing to be loved back. I want to trust myself again. I want peace that doesn't depend on someone staying. I want to feel proud of how I handled this, even if I never get an apology." He finished the page, closed the journal, and cried, not the kind of crying that breaks you apart, the kind that finally begins to release something. He also started changing his routines, not because he was running from memory, but because he deserved something new. He changed the layout of the living room, replaced the couch, donated the towels and blankets they had chosen together, repainted the bedroom a deeper, calmer shade of green. He didn't touch one particular box, though, the box of her things. It sat on a shelf in the closet, out of sight but never really gone. He didn't know when he'd be ready to deal with it. He made peace with the idea that maybe healing didn't require rushing that moment. Sometimes healing is simply not forcing yourself to be ready before you are. He also started spending more time with people, not to forget, but to reconnect. Chris invited him to dinners, hikes, weekend drives along the coast. Their conversations changed. They didn't revolve around heartbreak. They talked about future plans, projects, hobbies, philosophy, absurd memes. Laughter slowly returned to Alex's voice, almost surprising him when it came out. One night, after watching a comedy show together, Chris said, "You know, I'm proud of you. You didn't turn hateful. You didn't turn into someone bitter." Alex didn't respond immediately. He was thinking, because the truth was, it would have been easy to become bitter. To decide that love was dangerous, to close every door and promise himself never to trust again. But he didn't. Even in the worst pain, he still believed love could be real. That said something about him, not about what was done to him. "Thanks," Alex said quietly. "I'm trying. I can see that," Chris replied. "And I want you to know that matters." The gym became another anchor, not for escape but for rebuilding. His sessions changed. He used to train with intensity, goals, measurable progress. Now the gym became a place to feel, to breathe, to remember he still lived in his own body. He'd finish sets and stand there, catching his breath, feeling his heartbeat, steady and alive. Some days that was enough of a reason to keep going. He didn't try to transform himself to prove something. He focused on strengthening himself because his body had carried him through hell, and he respected it for that. There were also nights of loneliness. Of course there were. Sometimes he missed the rhythm of partnership, the shared kitchen noises, the effortless goodnight kiss, the small routines that never felt like routines until they were gone. But unlike before, this loneliness was not the enemy. It was something he could sit with, something that didn't scare him anymore, because loneliness was no longer a reminder of what he had lost. It was a reminder that he was still here, living, growing, healing. The real turning point came quietly, no dramatic epiphany, no emotional monologue, just a simple morning. He woke up, made coffee, opened the curtains, and realized, without force, that she was no longer the first thought in his mind. The ache had softened into something else, a memory he no longer needed to hold tightly. He didn't feel triumphant. He felt calm. He smiled to himself, just a little, not because he was over it, but because he trusted that one day, maybe not soon, maybe not predictably, his heart would open again. Not timidly. Not guarded, but wiser, clearer, more grounded, more real, because he understood something now. Love was never the mistake. Giving everything was never the flaw. The mistake was giving it to someone who didn't know how to hold it, and now he knew better. Months passed. Seasons shifted, and slowly, Alex began to feel like someone he recognized again, but also someone new. Healing didn't erase what happened. It reshaped the meaning of it. He didn't try to move on in the sense of forgetting. He moved forward, carrying only the parts of himself he wanted to keep. One afternoon, Alex sat in his favorite cafe, the one he had avoided for months because it was the cafe where he and Morgan used to plan weekends and talk about the future. The place hadn't changed. The same wooden tables, the same warm yellow lights, the same soft jazz in the background. But he had changed. He ordered a black coffee and took a seat near the window, the one that overlooked a quiet street lined with trees that hadn't yet lost their leaves. He opened his journal, not to write pain this time, but to reflect. He wrote, "I am learning to trust myself again. I didn't deserve what happened, but I deserved where it led me. I can love without losing myself next time." The page ended with, "I am proud of myself." He closed the journal, and this time no tears came. Just a steady, grounded exhale. The box of Morgan's belongings still sat in the closet. He didn't avoid it now. He just didn't need to confront it on any schedule other than his own. One evening, quiet, calm, ordinary, he opened the closet door and took the box down. Not because he was overwhelmed or triggered or emotional, but because he felt ready. He placed the box on the kitchen table, sat down, and opened it slowly. Inside were small things. A scarf, a book with the corners bent, a necklace, an old Polaroid of them laughing on the pier, a letter she wrote on their first anniversary, full of words she didn't keep. He looked at each item, and instead of pain, there was distance. Not coldness, just space. He didn't feel anger. He didn't feel longing. He simply acknowledged this was real once, but it isn't anymore, and that's okay. He placed everything back in the box, closed it gently, and set it aside to donate or store elsewhere. He didn't need to decide that part right away. The hard part was already done. The healing also appeared in unexpected moments, like how he interacted with others now. He had become more aware of people's emotional signals, more patient when listening, more intentional in his boundaries. He realized something important. He had always been loyal, committed, willing to choose someone fully. None of that was a weakness. His mistake was giving that loyalty to someone who didn't understand the weight of it. Now he knew the difference between someone who wants him and someone who can truly meet him. One night, while scrolling through his phone, he came across photos from a hiking trip he and Chris had taken a few weeks earlier. In the photos, Alex was smiling, not forced, not pretending, just genuinely at ease. He noticed something in his own eyes, clarity, not hardness. Not bitterness, just peace. He hadn't seen that in himself for a long time. He set the phone down and looked out the window at the night sky. Dark, quiet, scattered with stars. There was no dramatic soundtrack. No revelation moment, just a deep, calm awareness. He had survived. He had rebuilt. He had grown, and he still had love to give. Eventually, much later, someone new entered his life. Not in a dramatic or romantic explosion. There was no rush, no chasing, no hunger for distraction. It started naturally. Her name was Elise. She was kind in a quiet way, thoughtful without being performative. They first met through a group hiking event. She laughed easily, asked questions that showed she actually listened, and didn't try to fill silence with noise. There was no spark of obsession, no dizzy infatuation, just warmth, presence, a gentle curiosity. Alex didn't try to impress her. He didn't contort himself to fit her expectations. He simply showed up as he was. They talked about books, music, travel, childhood memories, future dreams, not grand promises, just honest thoughts. There was no immediate confession. No desperation. No rush to define anything. They shared moments, simple ones, walking after the hike, talking about the ocean, sharing coffee on a drizzly afternoon, laughing at something mildly stupid and not caring how it looked. For the first time, Alex realized love didn't need to feel like losing balance. It could feel like coming home, not dramatic, not overwhelming, not painful, just steady, grounded, mutual, safe. One evening, as they sat on a low stone wall watching the sun drop behind the trees, Elise turned to him and said, "You seem like someone who's learned how to be alone without being lonely." Alex paused. Not because he didn't know the answer, but because he felt it. He nodded. "I have," he said. "Took me a while, but yeah," she smiled softly. "I like that." And Alex realized he liked that too. Not the pain that had led him here, but the strength that had grown from it. He didn't know where this new connection would lead. He didn't need to know. For the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel heavy or uncertain. It felt open, possible. His heart was not waiting to be rescued. It was ready to walk beside someone, if and when the time was right. And that, he realized, was healing, not forgetting, not replacing, not closing the door forever, just reclaiming his life, his voice, his hope, and stepping forward without fear. I've learned that life doesn't always break where we expect it to. Sometimes it snaps in the quiet places, in the promises made behind closed doors, in the trust we give without hesitation, in the moments we don't think twice about because love made us feel safe. Losing Morgan. Losing what I thought we were, it shattered me. But the breaking wasn't the end. It was the beginning of understanding myself. Not as a husband, not as a son, not as someone defined by who he stood beside, but simply as me. And maybe that's the hardest part of love. Not giving it, not losing it, but rebuilding the part of yourself that believed you needed someone else to be whole. I used to think closure came from answers, From explanations, from apologies, but I know now, closure is a choice. A quiet one. One you make alone when no one else is looking. You let go, not because they deserve forgiveness, but because you deserve peace. Morgan is gone from my life. Her echo doesn't hurt like it used to. Sometimes I remember her laugh, or the way she moved her hair behind her ear when she was thinking. I remember the small parts, the ones that felt real. And I let them be just that, memories. They don't define me anymore. My son, Jacob, is home. Not the boy who followed someone else's lead, but the man who finally learned to listen to his own voice. We cook dinner together sometimes. We laugh. There are still days that feel heavy, but heaviness doesn't scare us the way it once did. Not now that we know we can lift it. And me? I don't pretend to have found perfect clarity or perfect healing. Those things aren't destinations, they're directions. You walk toward them a little at a time. Every day I try to walk toward kindness, toward patience, toward love. Not just the love we give to others, but the love we finally learn to turn inward. If you are listening to this, and you have loved someone who hurt you, if you have stayed too long, given too much, or lost yourself somewhere along the way, I hope you know this. You are not broken. You are not foolish. You are not weak. You were just trying to love, and that is never a shameful thing. The real story begins when you choose to love yourself enough to keep going. So tell me, would you have walked away too? Or would you have tried to hold on a little longer? Let me know in the comments. And if you'd like to hear more stories like mine, stories of healing, love, and lessons learned the hard way, make sure to subscribe and stay a while. We're learning together. One day, one breath, one story at a time.